Here's what's coming up on today's show.
Now you need to work with someone that can show you how to properly distribute it over 20 to maybe 30 years of retirement life so that it remains. And if you need to provide legacy, that's yet again another thing.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
It's time once again for How Money Works with Craig and Jennifer Moser from Maestro Wealth Advisors. Thanks so much for tuning into the program as we talk investing, finance, and retirement with Craig, who's a financial advisor and certified financial planner, and Jennifer, who's a financial advisor and certified exit planning advisor. And of course, the team is serving you in the Triad from their offices in Winston-Salem and Greensboro. They also have the online website you can go check out. Boy, I sounded like an old person right there, didn't I? Online website. You can check them out on the interwebs at maestrowealth.com.
On the interwebs.
The interwebs at maestrowealth.com, or just call them at 336-448-1086 to get started today with that complimentary, no cost, no obligation consultation. So pick up the phone. There's no reason not to. Come in and have a chat, see where you stand, get started with that chat today. 336-448-1086. Craig, you laughed at me. How you doing, buddy? Doing good?
I'm doing okay. I'm just listening to you.
Ramble on, I know.
Interwebs.
The interwebs. I love the interwebs. That's a fun one. Well, let's talk financial DIY, guys. Look, you know, there's DIY everything. Craig, you do a lot of remodeling, and you've done a lot of house flipping, and you're a handy guy.
Go there.
Well, but you're a handy guy, right? You've done a lot of stuff. And so it's very popular for people to do all this stuff. But when it comes to finance, it's also become very popular and easy, I think, for one side of this equation, right? The accumulation side. It's easier than ever probably to save money, put money away. Lots of apps, lots of tools, lots of things out there to help you with that. But when you come across somebody who doesn't have a financial advisor, what's their reason for taking that DIY approach? Like somebody comes in to sit down for a consultation and says, I've always been doing it myself, but now I'm here. What's some of their reasons for that?
Well, some of them are cheap. They don't want to pay for anything. I hate to say it that way, but
Fair.
I mean, I've got it. I understand. Don't pay for anything that doesn't have a value. I've never liked paying for something that I didn't get my value out of. But truly, it's like you said, we have people come in and they say, every time I've ever earned that I saved, I put it in the S&P 500 and it's been good to me. And I can't argue that point. If you have left that alone from, say, 1985 until now, you have made some money. You have. You might have a low cost basis and a tax problem, but the other side of it is now you have this big old fat pile of stocks, 500 of them, and when you start to take money out of that thing, you're subject to the volatility of the market. And it's a big deal. So I see it a lot. Other things would be, they just don't really think it's that important. I've saved a bunch of money, and so, I'm going to turn my Social Security check on and I'm going to live on the proceeds. I'll use some of my retirement account and I will be fine. I hear different things, but most of the things that come to me are that. I don't think I need anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I look at you? I can take $50,000 out of my $750,000 pile of money and it'll keep up with it.
And some people just like the thrill of the investment, right? And putting money in and seeing it go up and, and making those dollars and really not remembering when they put the money in and lost those dollars. But it's the excitement of some of the investment.
My brother, I'll tell a story real quick. My brother is in Texas in the oil business and makes a very fine living. And he called me up and he said, look at this. I've been trading stocks. I'm better than you. And he did pretty good. I mean, he did. It was a good time in the market and he hit some home runs. And he goes, what do you think? And I said, is that in an IRA? And he goes, no. Why? It cost him 37% on those trades when he bought low and sold high really quick. And he goes, I won't tell you what he said, but it was something. and so you don't know what you don't know. It's just like the house. We had a client, he had this real estate in California. He said, we're going to sell it. And we told him how to do a 1031 exchange. So when you get ready to do it, call us. And so we were sitting down going over something else. And he said, I did it. I did the house. And I opened a separate account and put the check in there and Jennifer's head drops. You just made a mistake that you can't back out of, because what happened is you had to use a qualified intermediary to move the funds. You had to identify a property in so much time and blah, 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 blah. And he said, oh, you know what? And he was mad because he had made a financial mistake. He was close. Mm-hmm. If he had just used the intermediary, we could have got him the rest of the way. But it's interesting. What you don't know, you don't know. It's like, spouses and spousal cover income off of a Social Security check. Or what if you were married to somebody for 10 years, but now you're divorced and not remarried? There's things that you just, unless you study this stuff, unless you have done it and have the experience, there's just no way you'll know. So, you kind of look at things through rose-colored glasses, and everything has to be perfect, but I promise you something will go kaboom sooner or later. And you need to have a real plan in place that has looked at more than probably what you'd know to look at.
So those DIYers, why would they even come to a financial advisor? What are those triggers that say, maybe I need to get out of the DIY business on this money, right?
Usually taxation, right? That's one of them.
Well, I think one of them is that they see the size or the magnitude of a lifetime of savings. And they're like, oh, my goodness, I can't mess this up.
Well, true.
That's one thing. And then how do I take this big nest egg and chop it up into monthly, annual payments for the next X number of years and do it the right way? I think that's one trigger. What do you see, Craig, as a trigger?
Well, a lot of times they make a mistake, and then they realize, ow, that hurt. And maybe I don't know what I'm doing. We had some friends, and they were out doing the day trading thing. And for, about 3 or 4 months, they just really did well while the market was going up. And when the market went down, and they just lost their shirt because they thought the tool that they had used early on when the markets were in an upswing would give them the same type of return when the markets were going down, and it didn't. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden they're like, I've lost all the money I made and then some more. I guess I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like me working on a car. And I say this, and you will laugh, but if I work on your car in a plastic bag, I will take the parts I can't
fit back in.
Yeah, and take it to a real mechanic who will then laugh and fix it for me, because that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know how to do it. All I can say is, for us, when we work with someone, you're getting someone that has over 30 years of experience. I have done a lot of this. I'm not saying I'm the best in the world. I'm saying I'm very good, and I'm comfortable in this particular spot. Large numbers don't bother us like it might bother somebody else. So when you look at your future and say, I have spent a lifetime building this nest egg full of money, now you need to work with someone that can show you how to properly distribute it over 20 to maybe 30 years of retirement life so that it remains. And if you need to provide legacy, that's yet again another thing. So work through the different possible scenarios that can occur, such as, what if you're married, your spouse dies early? What if one of you gets sick? Heaven forbid our federal government needs some more tax money, and they say, you've got all this money in an IRA or a 401k, and now we're going to charge you more to withdraw those funds. All of these things are possible. And so you need to have financially, from a financial plan perspective, ran these scenarios out in front of you and said, okay, this works. This one works. This one could be a problem. What do I do about it? And that's how you make good financial decisions. Not just saying, I've got a bunch of money and I've always done well in the past, because that can be a false approach there. So again, I would recommend that you give us a call. Our number is 336-448-1086. Let's sit down with what you have and what you want, and let's run some of these scenarios so we can understand how well it's going to play out, I guess is the way to do it.
Because, some of those common retirement mistakes are not planning for longevity and inflation, not planning for the Social Security and how Social Security interweaves with what you've already saved and accomplished, and turning on your income. People have a tendency to look at Social Security in isolation. Oh, yeah, the break-even's going to be 81, and I don't plan to live past 81, so I'm going to go ahead and start with Social Security. Well, but you've got other things in play that you need to augment and decide when you're flipping this switch on, when do you flip the other switch on or off and go between the two. One thing that we didn't talk about, Craig, was another trigger is maybe they've received an inheritance. I mean, we've had several people come to us and say, I've just received an inheritance. I'm not used to this, size of money or complexity, inherited IRAs and annuities that have matured, and what do I do with this box of assets that I've just inherited? How do I make this work?
Right.
And not let it slip through my fingers.
Right.
So those are other triggers that can occur, and it's usually dealing with, have you made a mistake? Do you not want to make a mistake? And the size of the asset that you could make a mistake with. I think that's the magnitude of why people might want to switch from doing a DIY to actually meeting with a financial professional. We're talking with several people about, estate planning. They're looking at, is their estate plan set up the right way to pass these assets to the legacy generation? Business owners, are they ready to now translate, a lifetime of work in their business and turn that business into, a pile of money for them to retire on or just walk away and let it, slip through their fingers. So there are lots of different things that are in play for people, as they're approaching retirement and making the best decision possible. So we put together a guide, tried and true. It's Retirement Isn't for Sissies, and you can find that on maestrowealth.com/education under useful guides. That's maestrowealth.com/education under useful guides. Retirement Isn't for Sissies. Please check that out. It's a wealth of information. If you are a DIYer, it'll go through 5 important things for you to make sure that you've considered in your retirement plan so you don't mess it up. And if there's anything that's a question that you're like, I didn't handle this, then maybe it's time to bring in the professionals and give us a call. 336-448-1086. We'd be honored to sit with you and go through your retirement plan and create your custom plan for you. 336-448-1086.
You can also find them online at maestrowealth.com, or you can just call them at 336-448-1086 for your complimentary, no cost or obligation financial review and retirement conversation. All right, guys, let's get into the long haul. So we're living longer and longer. And so how is that impacting your overall retirement strategy, guys? Because it's the big risk multiplier, right? The longer we're around, it multiplies every other risk. So talk to me about it.
So what's the downside to living a longer life expectancy? You need more money. Because you've got to fund it.
Look at Social Security. When it first started, the average American lived to 63 to 64. I finally got that out. And they started at 65. I thought, well, how devious, but what happened is now
they dangle that little carrot.
Now we're seeing folks in their late 80s and 90s, and that's not an abnormal thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know what the stats say. What is it, 86 or 87 average person lives to? But I'll tell you what, I see people living longer than that. So inflation, taxes, and the need for cash flow for longer puts stress on folks' retirement nest egg. So if you've stopped and thought about it, it's like I have saved a bunch of money, but I need so much. And then I don't know if anybody on the listening to the radio today has gone to the grocery lately, but things cost more. That inflation thing is brutal. And when I look at the tax thing, I go, most folks in our age bracket had a 401k. This thing started about 81 and proliferated. So you saved in a convenient place to save. They took it out of your paycheck at work. They put it into an account. You got a tax deduction. You felt great about it. Now when you go to access those funds, everything's taxable. I've got to pay tax on every dollar I withdraw from that account. And there's almost no way to get out of it. I mean, I know you can give a little bit of money away and that type of thing once you reach 70 and a half, but the reality is more taxes. And if you haven't really thought of this, you need to. For most of the people back in the day, they got a company pension. Well, those days are gone for the vast majority of people. I mean, Reynolds doesn't have one anymore. That was sort of a mainstay here in Winston-Salem.
Found out Raytheon doesn't have any more either.
No way. Mm-hmm. Really? Mm-hmm. All right. So what you've saved and accumulated, plus probably your Social Security, is what there is. So unless you put together a plan that has plenty of income that exceeds inflation, you may outlive your savings.
Let's talk about inflation a little bit, because that is one of the biggest downsides for a longer life is that inflation over 10 years doesn't seem that bad. Let's just assume inflation's 3%. So if you wanted to live on $100,000, what would that $100,000 look like in 10 years from now? Well, that $100,000 would be like $73,000 now, because your buying power is being reduced every year by that 3%.
So what are you
a lot
doing?
Of people,
You're deflating the number. You're saying if I'm living 10 years from now and my income's still 100, it would be like living on 73.
On 73.
I got you.
Right.
I got you.
So so that's 10 years. But if you take that same 3% over 30 years of retirement, so if people retire at 65, live to 95, that's 30 years in retirement. That $100,000 lifestyle really is saying, can you live on $40,000 now? Because you're deflating that 100 over 30 years at 3%. Can you live on $40,000?
So you
Probably
have to
not.
have an income that goes up at least with inflation to maintain your standard of living and your lifestyle.
Right.
So, it's hard to think about that, especially when we run these analysis for really young people. Boy, does it look dumb, because we inflate that out for maybe 40 or 50 years. And so what was 100 in our example that Jennifer's using?
Yeah, in 30 years, that's like having $242,000 of lifestyle. And you're like, I don't need that. No.
You don't need that today. But think about the price of a car. Think about the price of a home. Think about going to
repairs. Oh my gosh, have you called a plumber lately? I mean, you might think I don't need those big ticket items because I've already purchased those big ticket items, but it's the little things that add up. Home repairs, plumbing, health care, which even outpaces standard inflation, food. So all of that deals with inflation, and the longer you live, the more impactful inflation is. So we've seen people, maybe parents of clients who have simply outlived their money, Craig, and really it impacts them quite a bit. And
emotionally too.
Yeah, it does. And what it does is basically it drastically reduces your lifestyle or your choices that you have in retirement. And who wants to be 70s, 80s, 90s and feel restricted that they really can't go anywhere, spend anything that they used to doing, and it's very restrictive in their later years. We had a client that sent us a note, I guess it was about 4 years ago, and they said, Craig, you're right. I wish I had listened to you a lot earlier in life, but I've really cut back, and I think I could make it, but I have no extra spending money whatsoever. And it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking for me because we taught a class. Honestly, they went with somebody else. And I'm like, okay. And I don't know what those folks did because, we teach classes all the time and they were great, but they didn't stay with us. And then all of a sudden, about 5-10 years later, they came to us and they said, we basically spent it. And when we got hold of the plan, it's like, oh my goodness, I can't make this work for you. And I was paralyzed. I didn't know what to do because it was too late. He had been in retirement for 7-8 years, I guess. And all of a sudden, the money was just about gone. And so we had to cut him way back in order for him to be able to stretch his funds.
Conversely, we had another client to come in and basically got ahead of it and say, okay, here's my pile of stuff. What do I need to do to make this work? And, they had a couple of homes. They sold a home, put that money in savings. They did some other, reorganization that you worked with them. And, now they're sitting pretty comfortably and have an actual plan to actually get them through retirement that they feel very confident in, that it can weather those storms. So that's the real importance of working with a financial advisor, is looking at the what ifs. Have you accounted for what ifs in your plan, and how would that impact the lifestyle of you and your surviving spouse? That's the beauty of planning and giving you that control. I talk about control more and more because people want to have control of their life and their money, and this is the way to add control on things that they can't control otherwise. So we're talking about the long haul. What about even for people who don't run out of money? How do we see their expenses change in their latter years? Well, we talk about the go-go years, slow-go years, and not no-go, but I think it would be doctor-go years, right?
That's what I was going to say. It seems like when you get into those 80s, it's like their social club is at the doctor's office because they know everybody there. But think about that. When you're young, and young from a retirement standpoint, so I'll just throw 65 out there. To be retired, that's fairly young. You usually still have your health. You can go travel. You can go do things. You can still hike. You can go and live a life. So that's the go-go years. And then when you hit mid-70s, it's not like you're not able to do it, but you have slowed somewhat. Maybe you've done all of it. And so that's usually the cheaper part of it, because maybe your health isn't bad yet, but you're just not going as much because you're not as go-go as you used to be. And then later in life, it seems like it's more expense for doctors. I mean, I'm just showing you what I see. And so people in their mid to late 80s, there's a lot more medical care to stay on top of it. And so that's usually a little more expensive time in their life.
That not only medical care, but also doing the things that you aren't able to do anymore. And you've got to actually hire those services out.
Yep.
So your expenses basically kind of the smile of retirement, or, you spend more in the go-go in the front, less expensive maybe in the slow go, and then it goes up again, uptick in the latter years. And so it's important to kind of consider that when you are looking at your retirement income, and are you able to weather these storms?
Yeah, I remember my father, he lived out in the woods, and he'd have to get on top of the roof and blow the roof with the blower. And he was about 84, and I came down the driveway, and there he is on top of the roof blowing. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, what do you mean? But eventually he couldn't get up there anymore. And I'm like, yeah, you don't need to be up there, sir. So he had to pay somebody to go clean off the roofs, over at those houses he had.
I got to tell on your dad, though.
Okay.
Rest in peace. He was so cheap, though. He would call your brother and say, I'll pay you $25 to mow my lawn.
And my brother's like, I won't even drive over there for $25. But he did it anyway.
But he did it.
Yeah, he did it anyway.
But it was so funny. So he was not, he didn't believe in inflation. I don't think your dad did.
Frugal was an understatement for my father. But when you look at expenses, when you look at your point in life and say, can I make this work? There's a real question. You have to look at the long haul and say, there are things that are going to probably happen in front of me. I need to take a look. I need to evaluate the numbers. And once I have them in front of me, then I can make value decisions based on facts. Otherwise, it's hope or a guess. So come see us, Jennifer and I, at Maestro Wealth Advisors, and we will run these numbers for you. Where it goes, it goes. But, that's an important thing to have done and have behind you. You might find that, we had somebody that came in the other day, and we've been working with these folks for years, but now they're serious about retiring. And they said, well, about 3 years, I'm going to call it quits. When we ran the analysis, I'm like, there's a lot of money left over here. I mean, I couldn't make it mess up. So it's like you have done a very fine job. And so maybe a higher income than what you anticipated, or maybe 2 or 3 years earlier if you wanted to call it a life now. He's going to do the higher income and work a few more years. But that's the thought that you need to have when you go see someone at Maestro. What Jennifer and I can do for you is show you what you're capable of. The other side of that is, if you are expecting more than what your money can do for you, you need to know that now, so that a long life expectancy won't run you out of money later in life.
You plan for your parties, your trips, your vacations, a wedding. We think you should also plan for your retirement. Give us a call, 336-448-1086. Let's start the discussion and the conversation. It's all about you, and we're here to serve you. 336-448-1086. Maestro Wealth Advisors, Craig and Jennifer Moser.
Thanks so much for listening to How Money Works, guys. We always appreciate your time. Get onto the calendar today with the team for that no-cost, no-obligation consultation about your retirement journey at 336-448-1086. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086. Or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Securities offered through Cetera Wealth Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.